She knew her whole life she wanted to be an author. Her dream was to be able to write books for a living and do nothing else. She wrote stories all through high school that students and teachers signed up to read and knew that she had a talent. At age 22, she released her first book. What happened over the next 6 years is astonishing. Not only has she realized her dream, but she is now living her dream. Join me as I talk to the Queen of Twist, Kiersten Modglin, on this episode of True Crime and Authors.
Welcome to True Crime and Authors Podcast, where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction. Here's your host, David McClam.
What's going on, everybody? Of course, this is your man, David McClam, and welcome to another episode of True Crime and Authors. Hey, if you guys haven't already, make sure you're following us on all of the social media channels. You can find that in the show notes. One link to a link tree will get you all of the links you need to have. So if you've been following the show, been paying attention to your calendar, you know today it is time for another author interview. And boy, do I have one for you today. Let me tell you a little bit about who our author is for this episode. She is an Amazon top 10 best-selling author of psychological thrillers and a member of International Thriller Writers, Novelists, Inc., and the Alliance of Independent Authors. She is a KDP Select All-Star and a recipient of Thriller Fix's Best Psychological Thriller Award and Suspense Magazine's Best Book of 2021 Award. She grew up in rural Western Kentucky and later relocated to Nashville, Tennessee, where she now lives with her husband, daughter, and their two Boston Terriers, Cedric and Georgie. Her work is currently being translated into multiple languages. She is a Netflix addict, Shonda Rhimes superfan, psychology fanatic, and indoor enthusiast. She also enjoys rainy days spent with her nose in a book. She is the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Arrangement, which is a part of a trilogy, the other books being The Amendment and The Atonement. She is known as the Queen of Twist. She is the one and only Kiersten Modglin. Kiersten, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I am extremely excited to have you here. We have some good things to talk about. We are definitely going to talk about The Arrangement. Let's start off a little bit about you. You know, I have read a couple of things that said you always wanted to be an author. You are at the top of what I consider the indie game. How do we get there?
Oh man, yeah, it's been 6 years as of this month. So that's how long my career has been. And I've always wanted to write, literally from, I think, the time I could hold a pencil. It's all I've ever dreamed of. I was the kid that for birthdays and Christmases, all I asked for was notebooks and pencils because I was just filling them with stories as fast as I could. And so, yeah, it was just always my dream. And I was always told, you need a backup plan. But I just never wanted to do that. I always knew that this was what I wanted to do. And so in 2016, my first book came out. I was 22 at the time. So I kind of hit the ground running as quickly as I could and released that one. And then in these 6 years, I've released 34 others. And so I stayed busy, and it definitely wasn't an easy road. I started not doing so well the first 4 years. And then in 2020, things really started to take off for me, and it's kind of skyrocketed from there. And like you mentioned, The Arrangement has just done so well for me and brought me so many new readers. And yeah, I'm just absolutely living my dream.
I've done a lot of research on you. I know that you said you was the kid in school, I believe high school, that was writing these stories, and you would actually have teachers and others lined up to read what you were writing, which says to me you were good back then. So how did you start that? How did you get your teachers interested in what you were doing?
Yeah, so like I said, I was always writing. I always had a notebook full of stories. And from a really early age, when we'd be in English class and we'd have to write a short story for something or any kind of story or even like an article, I would always have teachers tell me, like, you're really good. You could do something with this. Like, your writing is great. And so I was just really encouraged from a young age to pursue this. And as I grew up, like, I started turning those short stories into novels. And Actually, I wrote my first novel in fourth grade called The Life and Times of the Three Potatoes. And so I kind of went from there and I would just start writing novels. And then around, I think, sixth or seventh grade, I wrote the first one that I felt really proud of. And so I took it to my mom, who took it to her friends. And she was a teacher. So it kind of got passed around to all of her friends. And then I showed some of my friends, and they were all like, oh, I heard it was really good. I want to read it. And so more people were asking. And then by the time I got into high school, they kind of relied on the fact that I would write a book every summer and then I'd bring it and I'd print it out and put it in a binder. And by the time I got to school, I had a list of teachers and students waiting. And it would be like, I just had enough, printer paper and ink to print off one copy. So I'd bring it to one person, they'd read it, I'd mark them off and take it to the next person all throughout the year. And so, yeah, I've always wanted to do this and I've always wanted to do things my own way, which is why indie was really exciting for me. But yeah, I've just always been a little bit of a go-getter.
Now, beyond that, as you said, your first book was published in 2016. At that time, it was titled If It Walks Like a Killer. That was released in August of 2016. It has since been retitled Becoming Mrs. Abbott. In that 6 years, the things that you have accomplished is astonishing. When you set out to do this, did you think 6 years later you would be where you are right now?
Oh man, that's such a tough question because I always hoped it would. It's certainly what I always dreamed of. So in high school, our senior year, we had to write a letter to ourselves in 30 years. And I wrote in my letter that I would have 2 books published in 30 years. And as I mentioned, I'm only 28 now. So I've well surpassed that goal. But it's always been what I hope for. And I think a part of me always believed that eventually it would happen, that eventually I would find my readers. I don't know. I definitely didn't think it would happen this soon. You hear of authors struggling for years and years, and 4 years of struggle is really short compared to a lot of people. So I feel very lucky and very blessed that it's happened as quickly as it has. But yeah, I think a part of me always believed eventually I might have been 90 years old and like, this is the one, I know it. But I always believed that eventually it would happen for me.
So, of course, you have some hits out there. We're talking about the astonishing amount of books that you have here in just a bit, because there are quite a few. There's even been jokes made about if you were going to release a book a month that goes around on your TikTok with your fans. You do have a very loyal fan base. We are all named the K-Mod Squad. Who came up with that name?
So actually, yeah, a reader came up with it. For a long time, I had a fan group on Facebook and it was just called Twisted Readers because like I'm the queen of twists. And so that was the thing for a long time. And then I had a reader who we would talk occasionally and she would always call me K-Mod. And I was like, I love that. Growing up, I did not have a name that could have a nickname. And I always wanted a nickname. And so I just loved it. And then I was like, ooh, K-Mod Squad is cool. And so I literally just like on a whim renamed all of my stuff the K-Mod Squad and just started running with it. And now it's, yeah, all my fans, all my readers call me that. And it's really cool.
So one of your breakout books, which is The Arrangement, you released it January 28th of 2021. I have finished that book. Before we dive into that, there's a couple of things that go with that I kind of want to bring up to see how you feel about that. Things that I have read. So I have heard and I've seen people complain, even people that I know, that the length of your book's not long enough. They say they feel like you compacted a lot of stuff in short chapters. Have you heard this? And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I hear it all the time. And to them, I say, so I write my books for readers like me. The books that I look to read are under 300 pages. I have a 5-year-old. I have a crazy household. I'm really busy with work all the time. And so when I read, I want a book that I can start at 8 p.m. and finish that night. I don't like books that, there's always exceptions, but typically I don't pick up books that are 400 and 500 pages because I know that's a huge investment of my time. And by the next day, I might have forgotten half of what happened. I also want books that don't have a lot of fluff. I want books that get straight to the point, straight to the action, because again, I'm really busy and I don't have time to have to read 300 pages before it gets to the actual good stuff. I also write for busy people like me who want to just jump right in and know what's happening and know why they should care. And so my books are not for everyone. I know that, but I try to pack as much as I can into very short books. They tend to be about 250 pages up to 300. I have some that are over 4, but I think it's only like 3 or 4 of them. I write the story as it comes to me. So I don't cut out things to keep it shorter and I don't add things to make it longer. It really is just the way that the story is told. But when I read, I don't read fluff. I tend to skip over and look for the dialogue and look for the action. And so as a writer, I skip over and I don't write the things that readers are going to skip anyway if they're anything like me. And so, yeah, I really enjoy stories that get straight to the point, straight to the meat of the story. And yeah, that's what I tend to write.
Well, let me be the first one to say this if I am. I appreciate that. When I did open up the arrangement the first time I started reading, that was exactly my thought. I was like, man, we got right into the point, right? There was nothing in between. There was no leading up to. We were right into what the story's about. I also appreciate that because the way that you wrote your books, I think in the arrangement, I counted that the longest chapter was about 15 minutes long. That only happened, I think, twice. And that only happened when you had to tell more of a dialogue in there to make it make sense. Every other chapter is between 3 and 6 minutes. I appreciate that because according to my Kindle, it was supposed to take me 5 hours to read that book. And I know it goes by individuals' reading pace. I finished that book in about 2.5 hours. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Because the fact is I don't know how other people do this, but I do a lot of my consuming books on my lunch break. My lunch break's an hour. I take about half hour to eat and the other half hour to read. When I look down and I look at my clock and it says the next chapter is 6 minutes and I still have 10 minutes, I'm like, hey, I can get another 1, maybe 2 chapters in. Before I know it, I'm already 88% through with the book. And I look at the percentage, I'm like, man, this book's almost over. And I'm like, wow, this is quick. So just know everybody does not complain about that. I actually appreciate that. I do read novels that's 300, 400, 500 pages. I've interviewed authors that has those books. Those are great, but they also have a time. Like you, I have a family, I have children, I got a whole lot of other things to do. If I could just pick up a book and say, hey man, it'd take me 2 hours to read this book and get something out of it, I think that's where one of your biggest knacks is. So keep that up. Don't let people deter you from that.
Thank you. I love to hear that because I feel the same way. So that's awesome.
I've also seen, because you made a very funny TikTok reel where I guess people has complained that your book has too many twists. It's a thriller. Is that not what the point is? What's your reaction to that? How do you feel? Do you feel like you have too many twists in your books or do you feel like it's just the right amount?
Yeah, I get those complaints a lot that there were just too many. There was one too many. And I like to say, I don't think there's such a thing as too many twists. For me, I read purely for entertainment. I want books to, as I said, just jump me right into the action of it. And I want it to keep me guessing. If I'm hit with a plot twist every chapter, I'm like, this is amazing. So again, I write for readers who are like me and who just want crazy plot twists all the time. I think that's the fun of it. If you're not just completely thrown off multiple times, then it's not as exciting, at least for me. So yeah, I think that every reader is different. Everyone has different preferences, but in K-Mod world, there's no such thing as too many plot twists. And I always aim to put the most possible in my stories.
Well, let's jump into the arrangement. To read one of your books is definitely a roller coaster. It never goes straight. It's never turned to the right or the left for too long. It's actually kind of just jerking you from one end of the track to the next. And I think that's what I like about it because the moment that I think that I know who is doing what, it's definitely not that person. It's somebody else. And then the thing is you get blindsided from something that you never seen coming. And in this book, that happened like a couple of times, especially when it dealt with Peter. Yeah. So your main characters in this book, the two main ones, is Ainsley and Peter. We do hear a lot about Glennon a lot, which is Ainsley's best friend. Ainsley and Peter, how do we come up with these two characters?
So actually, their inspiration came from a Facebook meme. I can't tell it because it would be a spoiler, but basically it was about a marriage and like what you would say with your spouse through, like what you would be willing to put up with. And I just thought it was such an interesting idea. And I thought it could be really fun to write these characters who were really just at like their breaking point and how far would they be willing to go separately and together to make the marriage work? You know, what lengths would they go to? And so, yeah, the idea just came from that. And I thought an open marriage is something that we see in comedy a lot, or even in romance a little bit, I think. But I've never really seen it with thrillers. And I was like, this could be really fun to see how dark we can take it and how twisted. And yeah, I had so much fun adding in all the plot twists.
So not to give anything away, directly what it kind of says from your Amazon page. I know I'm always safe when I read from there because this is what you release without giving any spoilers away. So for you guys that don't know what the arrangement is about, it was basically, a situation that was meant to fix a marriage. No one's supposed to get hurt in this whole entire thing. It's kind of like the lines of wanting to have an open marriage, But then when this starts to take place and things starts to happen, it becomes a whole different thing. And as a married person myself, I'm sitting here going, I've had a lot of friends like, man, it'd be cool to have an open marriage. And after reading this book, I'm like, maybe not so cool.
I had readers reach out to me saying like their husband was concerned when they saw the book in their Amazon cart. And I was like, let them know it will not make you want to have an open marriage. It's definitely not a how-to.
No, it definitely does the opposite because, it's kind of like things that you try to do to protect yourself from that. And then you make all these arrangements, you come with all these rules. And then you get to a point of saying, no matter what rule we put in place, this stuff can go completely off the rails. Now, the one question I've asked other authors too, I ask you the same one. It's often been said that when people write books, sometimes they're writing from experience, sometimes they're writing from something they wanted to do and not tried, or they're writing from an alter ego. When it comes to the arrangement, anything in that book has to do anything with you or an alter ego of yours?
Oh man, I think parts of myself slip into my characters in all my books. Different pieces of my personality. Like I feel like I have a lot of the same traits that Ainsley has, where she's kind of a perfectionist and she very much wants to be in control of everything. I say often that I am an indie author because I want to control every piece of my life. And so being able to do that is important to me and that's important to Ainsley. And yeah, I think the whole premise of it, like the open marriage, I am married. We've never had an open marriage, but I think it's natural to like wonder about things and then be like, oh, this could go really badly and have these like, terrible nightmares. And I am the kind of person that, when we go on vacation, I'm immediately like, this is how many ways this place could go wrong. This is how many ways we could die on this vacation. And so I think when anything occurs to me, I'm like, oh, this could go so badly. And before that, I had read another book called The Swap by Robin Harding, which is about a couple switching partners just for one night. And I just thought it was so interesting how she twisted it and how she took sort of this, normal, well, not normal, but this concept that like we've all seen in different movies and books and stuff, and just twisted it and made it a thriller. And so I really wanted to do something similar, but also very different.
The thing that makes this book and a lot of your other books come across so well is because they're written from perspective of things that could actually be happening and are probably happening in the world, right? We know that there is whole websites that's just set up for people to have open marriages or to conveniently cheat on their spouse without knowing. And I don't think anybody really ever thinks about what the consequence of that is. And I'm kind of like you. I've had those thoughts and friends like, I want to try this out. I'm like, so what happens if you run up on a woman and she happens to have like this big burly husband that's waiting for you with a shotgun? I mean, that can be, that's possible. Or, you're a woman and you're going to see a man and you think that nobody knows and the wife's in there waiting on you. It's like books like these, even though they're not real, can happen in real life. And for me, it makes me think, man, this really could happen.
Yeah, I think that's the fun of this genre is, you're following everyday normal people and you're just seeing like how one decision can like ruin their entire life. One wrong turn can just mess everything up. And that's why I love like the domestic thrillers, just because they are so fun and so relatable.
So when it comes to the arrangement, there's a lot of twists. The book, like you said, you get right into it. So there's not a whole lot I can say about it without giving things away. I did want to ask, though, about Glennon a little bit. Glennon is kind of there from the beginning. She's the best friend of Ainsley. She's always around. And you can tell at certain parts of the book, Peter's really annoyed because he's always around. But she's carrying things on her shoulders, too. So how did you come up with Glennon and make Glennon and Ainsley as close as possible when it's burning Glennon because she's not being 100% upfront with her best friend?
Yeah. So when I wrote Glennon, first of all, she's based off one of my favorite people in the world, Glennon Doyle. I just think she's amazing. And so that's where I got her name. So I just had to throw that out there. But I tend to write women who don't have best friends or who have friendships that are more catty or just not very genuine. And I think that happens a lot in this genre too. And so when I started writing this story, I knew that Ainsley and Peter were going to be kind of this cold couple. They had a lot of issues. Ainsley is very cold and calculating. Peter is kind of holding her at arm's length. And so it was really important for me to have someone in their life that brought some warmth to the story and just to their lives. And so that's where Glennon came in. I didn't always know where her part in the story, what her role was going to be, but I always knew that I wanted her to just bring some life to the story and their marriage. And it was really important to me to have Ainsley have someone to kind of lean on because I knew things were going to get dark and troubling. And so I really wanted Glenn to just kind of be that rock that was there through everything. And we do definitely see Peter get annoyed with her because she just very much butts into everything that's going on, but for good reason. And we see that through the story too. So I just think she was a lot of fun to write and to bring some happiness into what could be a really dark, scary story.
Here at True Crime and Authors, I read a lot of books. Every author that you've heard me interview and everyone that you will hear me interview, I've either read one of their books or I'm in the process of reading one. So how do I keep up with all of the books that I read? Well, that is where the show's sponsor, Catch Creations 614, comes into play. Catch Creations makes digital handmade planners and journals, and for those who want something on paper, printables as well. She can make anything from My Little Pony to Black Panther, anything that you can creatively think of, Catch Creations 614 can get it done. With excellent customer service and excellent communication, the owner, Kiersten, will make sure that your journal comes out right and perfect the first time. And for those who are listeners of this show, you will get a special 10% discount when you use the code TrueCrime10. Catch Creations, best handmade planners, journals, and printables in the business. Check it out now. But folks, unfortunately, I can't say more about the book because if I do, I'm going to start to give things away. I've been very calculated about what to say now. Hopefully, we've gotten you guys interested. You need to go read the arrangement. You will not be sorry, because that's all I can say. If I said any more, and Kiersten shaking her head, she knows I will start getting into plot lines, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So the arrangement is part of a 3-book series. What sparked you to turn it into a series?
So it was originally written as a standalone book. All of my books are standalones. And so it was not meant to be a trilogy. But what happened was when it released, it just took off. It really had a life of its own. I'd had breakout books before then, but nothing like this. It was number one for the whole first month and a half after its release. It just, took on a life of its own, like I said, and readers immediately started emailing me, what happens next? I want to know more. And I was just like, well, it's a standalone. You get to decide what happens next. And an entire year went by and I did over 200 book clubs and about 190 of them were for the arrangement. I released 8 books that year and 190 were for the book I released in January. So I was like, okay, I have something here. I don't know what it is, but readers are connecting with the story and they're loving it. And so I kind of started playing around with the idea of, should I write a book 2? Because I was still getting asked, when will you release the second part? And so I really started playing around with, I always worry with sequels, can I make twists that still work? Because that's why I don't like series. I feel like once you know the characters and you know their story, it's harder to throw people off. And that's my whole brand. And so I came up with a twist that I was really excited about. And so I wrote book 2 and that was supposed to be the end. And very shortly after its release, I started getting the emails again. Okay, when's book 3 coming out? And so that one, was super successful too. And so I was like, okay, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to call it a trilogy. And yeah, that's going to be the end. And so it was very, very different for me because I don't write series. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun to really take that story, from what I initially planned for it to be in book 1 and make it really full circle with books 2 and 3 and just peel back the layers of these really complicated characters.
And you do see that in the timeline of releasing the books. Or like I said, arrangement was January 28th, 2021. We didn't hear about the amendment until it released a year and a month later on February 1st. And like you said, your fans was driving that, because when I read the end, I'm like, yeah, you can't just leave us like that, right? Yes, it would have totally worked as a standalone. But I can tell you as a fan of your books, what happens is in our mind, it never leaves us alone. I mean, I literally go to bed at night thinking, okay, so what's next? And so when you start getting those emails, it's because the people that's reading that book that kept it number 1 for as long as it was, it's like, there's got to be more to this story. It just can't leave me. I'm on a cliff and I'm hanging on by the edge. I need to know. And so we saw the amendment come out February 1st. And then that same year, A few months later, you released The Atonement, which you kind of teased that one a little bit because I think you was on another show and the guy asked you what was next. And you're like, hey, there's something coming out in July. I can't tell you what it is, but everybody's been waiting on it, which was The Atonement. Together, all three books, how have they been received as you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I hear mixed things. Some people, which is always my fear with writing series. Some people are like, I wish you would have just left it at one. Some people are like, I love book three more than books one and two. So it's very different. Like I said, it was different for me just to write them and to have all those worries of, can it live up to that first book? But overall, they've been very well received. Everyone seems to love them. I think with the third book, I really kind of, I hate to say this like and sound braggy, but like I really nailed the ending as far as I wrapped everything up that was going on. I gave an ending that was fit for these crazy characters. And I hope I really, satisfied readers with the way that it all wraps up. And yeah, I think every reader is different. Everyone has different opinions about it, but I feel very proud of the work that I did, the work that I put into it. And I love that readers knew before I did that there was more to the story.
Well, that's why you have readers, because sometimes fans can see what you can't, right? Because you're on one side of it, which is the side of being the author, producing. You're more worried about how it's going to be received. Are you connecting with the audience? While we're consuming that. And so we're the gauge that comes back and says, hey, Kiersten, this worked or really didn't work. And
Right.
so, and I know as horrible as this sounds, but the pandemic was bad, but it was good in so many ways. I live in California, about an hour away from LA. My skies was the cleanest it ever was. There was documentaries made about how animals are able to mate again and whales could hear. And for creative types like yourself and mine, we had a lot of time to do nothing but think about what our craft was. And you started spitting out books, and now they're continuing. So with that, the joke is that you release a book a month. Among all the authors I know of and read, even what we would consider big name authors, you release more books than anybody. I think as of counting, because you even have your own official Kiersten Modglin book list. I think we're at 34 books right now. How do you find time to write all those books?
Yeah, so we're at 34. That's my newest release will be number 34. I'm writing number 35 right now. This is my full-time job. It's been my full-time job since the end of 2019. I write for 8 hours a day. I very much treat this like a full-time job. There are no day dates or visits or vacations in the middle of the week. I'm at my desk 8 hours a day writing because that's what I had to do. When I started out, I didn't have a huge budget for ads. I didn't have, anything to really reach readers. And so what I kept hearing was, nothing will sell your last book like your next. And so I thought, well, I don't have a huge budget, but I know that I can write a quality story and I know that I can release consistently. And so I just started spending every spare moment writing and really working on, my craft and getting better with each story and releasing consistently. And that's really helped me. And so now that I'm able to do this full time, I'm not working around, a day job schedule and everything. It just makes it easier. And, I think because my books are shorter, that helps too. They're not crazy long, so I can write them a little bit shorter and still have consistent releases. And yeah, I aim for 12 a year. So really a book a month, but I've only ever hit 8. That's been my highest. So the pandemic definitely made it easier because I wasn't traveling or doing anything. This year, I'm back out on the road and going to signings. And so right now I'm going to hit 7, I think, this year. So I'm one behind, but it's because I've been doing a lot more. But yeah, it's just about priorities. And I know that if I don't write, my family doesn't eat. So I've got to keep books coming out and food on the table.
Let's talk a little bit more about that success of all these books. So from what I have done research on you, you were able to support your whole family on your writing. You retired your husband. Your husband had a little bit of a misfortune. He had got a little bit of a better job in 2019. 2020 comes along. He gets laid off in March like the rest of us almost did. I was just blessed that I was able to work from home, and you went with this full bore. How did you meet that range of success that quick?
Oh, yeah. So it was a crazy time. So literally for the first 4 years of my career, my daughter, so I had my first book released in August of 2016, and then my daughter was born in January of 2017. So I had my daughter basically my whole career. My husband and I both worked day jobs. So we would work all day. We'd come home. I'd put her to bed. And then I would be up until 2 or 3 in the morning writing. And then I'd go to sleep and be back up at 6 to get up for my day job. And we did that for 4 years, just nonstop. It was very, very hard. I was exhausted and burnt out, but I just knew I was working towards something. And then in 2019, things had started to pick up enough for me that we felt confident that if I stayed home, we weren't paying for daycare, we weren't paying for gas, that we could like just barely make it. But like I could actually get, 4 or 5 hours of sleep, which was exciting. And so we were like, okay, let's try this. This was in November of 2019. We're like, what's the worst that could happen? And then in March of 2020, we found out that my husband, who had, just taken a better job, which was also helping us financially, was getting laid off. And because he was at the bottom of the totem pole, because he just started, he was going to be the last person to come back. And so he was laid off until June. And from March until June, I actually started making enough to cover both of our old salaries on my book income. And so I was just like, stay home, help me with this. He's really good with ads and everything. And so he could help me with that, help me with our daughter, so I wasn't having to watch her while I was writing. And so it was such a weird timing, perfect timing really, because we were really stressed about what we were going to have to do. I was applying for jobs again and thinking that I'd made, the worst mistake of my life. And it was all really weird. But I had been, like I said, for 4 years, really working, really hoping and trying and pushing up book after book. And and then because I was home and I was able to write more, I was able to release a book a month for that whole first half of the year. And so that really helped propel me, in front of new readers. Plus everyone was home with COVID and more people were reading. And so it was just very lucky timing. But it was the scariest part of my life. And then it turned into the most amazing point in my life.
So that brings us to the ugly side of things. And this irritates me more than anything. It's happened to me back when I was in my Cena Corners days and I did video game reviews for a living. I became very popular, quite like yourself, and everybody decided to do what we're about to talk about to me as well. So it's happened to you before. Recently, you released that someone had released a book that was called The Deep Sleep, made it look like it was something that you did. But let me just say the cover was horrendous. I wasn't looking for it. It was nothing you would ever release. I have searched for it before this interview, and I believe that it's already come down. I can't find it anywhere. When this happens to you, how does it make you feel that someone is not only spoofing you, but is taking money out of you and your family's mouth?
Yeah, it's so frustrating because I have worked so hard for this. Like I always say, my success is not by chance. It's not luck. Like I have put blood, sweat, and tears into my career. I went from, submitting to publishers and everyone telling me no, that, they weren't interested in working with me, to now having people reach out to me. And that's all just on my success and my hard work. And that's not like me bragging at all. It's the truth. And it's, everyone wants a piece of the pie once you baked it yourself. Right. And so I think it's just scary because for the longest time I felt like, well, I was a nobody and no one's coming after me. They're going after the J.K. Rowlings of the world and the huge names. And so I really wasn't thinking about having to ever protect myself. And then I started seeing my books on pirate sites a lot. I started hearing people finding them. My readers would tell me, it's on these sites. And so I hired a company to take them down, to send DMCA notices to get them off pirate sites. So I pay $300 a month to this company to take them down, which sucks because that's money that I don't get to keep, solely to keep people from stealing from me. But I've willingly paid that for like 2 years now, and it's well worth it just for peace of mind. Then earlier this year, maybe late last year, I started finding my books on retailers. People would steal like the arrangement. My books are Kindle Unlimited exclusive, so they're only on Amazon in ebook form, and they would put them on Apple for sale, or they'd put them on Kobo or Nook. And so I was having to spend time reaching out to all these websites and saying, hey, this is not me, and having to try and get them to take it down. That company that I pay was also helping me do that. But that puts me in jeopardy with Amazon, which is really dangerous and scary because I could lose my ability to publish with them, and then we'd be back at square one. My family would not be eating. So that's really scary. But then, the most recent thing that's happened is earlier in August, I was looking on Amazon. I was looking at my page and I happened to see a book that I didn't recognize, but it was on my like Author Central page. And so I started looking into it because I have like translations coming out and stuff. And so I was like, well, maybe it's something like that. But no, It wasn't anything that was mine. I have a very unique name. I've looked on all social media. There's no other Kiersten Modglins out there. And so I reached out to Amazon and I was like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but this is not mine. It seems like they're trying to profit off my brand. Can you do anything? They removed it within a few hours and, it wasn't a huge deal. But I did decide to go ahead and trademark my name to protect myself in the future. And I kind of thought it was done. I thought it was over, not a big deal. Then on Wednesday of last week, so like August 24th, I got a message from someone who found another book on Goodreads. And they were like, is this your new one or has this been stolen? Because the cover sucked, basically. And I was like, yeah, that's not mine. So I went to look for it on Amazon, but I couldn't find it. And then I went back to Goodreads and I clicked on the link like to purchase from Amazon. And I could see it, but it was like not available. But then I later found out that it was on all of the other sites except the US. So I really think what the person did was they thought I wouldn't see it if it wasn't on the US, but it was on Canada and UK and Australia. So I reached out to Amazon again, and this time it was more of a fight. They did not take it down for several days. I had to contact my attorney who filed the trademark to find out what to do. But basically, yeah, and what happened was they named it The Big Sleep by Kiersten Modglin. And I Googled that blurb that they were using, and it was actually they named it The Deep Sleep. It was actually The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. And so it was like a popular book that they had just stolen and put it under my name. And we're trying to basically profit off of my success and hope my readers would buy it and read it. And then they were going to make money off of it. And they just hoped I would never notice or never be able to get it down. And I mean, they put it up on the 13th. So almost a month it was up there. I don't know what they made off of it, but it was just a whole mess. And I posted today. It's finally down after days of fighting with Amazon. They did agree to take it down for me. But I posted today and I warned other authors because I think that this is going to be a new scam that we see of people taking books from other authors and putting it under popular brands. And it's just really scary. I and other authors that I know, we're doing these things honestly. We're trying to build careers honestly. And it really sucks when you have people that put stuff out there because it's very damaging. I mean, what if it was a really bad book and then someone reads it first and they're like, oh, I'm never reading her again, or I mean, there's so many ways that this could go wrong. What if someone read it, they realized it was, The Big Sleep, and they were like, oh, Kiersten Modglin plagiarizes books. So it's all this really scary stuff. And if my name was Ann Smith, that's a little bit different because there's a lot of Ann Smiths out there, but it's just a very blatant attempt to steal from me and steal from my readers. And so, yeah, it's really, really frustrating that it's happening. And I'm really scared about how much more often we're going to start seeing it.
So not like as if that wasn't enough, there's now a new trend of what I consider stealing a book from authors, which is on Amazon. So what people do is they go out and they buy the book and they read the book and then they return the book before the return period. So when an author thinks that they've sold this book, they count that money in the bank account, what they're going to do with their bills, all of a sudden you start getting hit with returns. What's your feeling on that?
Oh my gosh, use a library. That's the worst thing in the world. And I feel like I get so frustrated too because I see people try to justify it like, well, I didn't like it or, it wasn't for me. And I think if you get 2 or 3 chapters in, which is basically the free sample Amazon will give you, and you decide it's not for you, that's one thing. But to read an entire book and then return it, like you said, that's taking money directly from authors. But you cannot do that at the movie theater. You can't go in and say, well, I didn't enjoy it, I want my money back. You shouldn't return, DVDs or anything else at the store. With Amazon, they don't allow you, once you've like downloaded a movie and play it, they don't allow you to return it. With music, if you buy music, you can't return that. So I don't understand at all why they allow digital ebooks to be returned. And I really hope that it's something that they'll do something about because the thing is with TikTok, with, the whole book talk thing on TikTok, it became a really big trend of like a life hack. Save money, never pay for a book again, just download them and return them because Amazon has like a 7-day return, window. And it's just frustrating because it's like there are free ways to read books. There are libraries and there are like Kindle Unlimited is $10 a month and you can read all of my books. They're on there. So there's such free and affordable ways to read. And I really think that people think it's just this victimless, crime like piracy or anything else. But it's very much not. I mean, Amazon is taking that money directly back from us. They are not eating that loss, And so it really stings. And I'll see on my returns, I'll see like I have a series and I'll see, well, besides the arrangement, I have another one, but I'll see people reading and returning the entire series. They obviously didn't hate it. They just don't want to pay for it. And this is a job just like anything else. And we want to get paid for what we do.
Well, I know that you're in a contract with Amazon for KU, and I know that there's a lot of things that you wish you could say, but you can't, and I respect that. But I can say a lot of those things for you. So let me be the first one to say, for lack of a better term, it pisses me off. Because of the fact that with today's digital age, I don't feel like that Amazon is protecting you as an author as well as they could. Could they? Absolutely. There's a lot of videos out there of people who are developers for the Apple App Store. And one guy had a question of, I don't understand how come it takes so long for your app to come out. Apple's just being slow. And he explains there is a process. And the process is, let's say you wrote Angry Birds, I wrote Angry Birds, and a third person wrote Angry Birds, and we try to use the same company or we use a different company. The reason it takes so long is because Apple goes through to make sure that whichever Angry Birds app they release is the one that's supposed to go to the rightful owner, and they kick out and refuse the other ones. If Apple can do that for a game, Amazon certainly can do that for authors. You guys are making them money. They work for you, not the other way around. They signed you onto a platform in a contract because they felt like you wrote good enough that people would buy your books on KU at least, and they would make that money. If you are contributing to their livelihood, they should put in better protections for you. Don't tell me that they can't lower the return policy. I agree with you. If you buy a book, it should be permanent, especially if that author is on KU. You have no excuse. $9.99, that's less than what people pay for 2 Starbucks a day. So just go sign up for $9.99. Every Kiersten Modglin book is there. Read it first. Then if you enjoy it, go ahead, pay the $5.99 or whatever, because your books are really not ridiculous. I think the most I've ever seen a book of yours is $25. That's for a physical copy. That's the going rate. So if Amazon's listening, you guys need to up your game, because it's not only happening to you, and it upsets me because you have a family, right? I mean, that's the difference of saying we can eat and take the kid out this week versus, well, I'm sorry, we can't make that happen because somebody's stealing my stuff and I'm with a company that's not protecting me. If they're going to make you guys be exclusive, you can't make any money anyplace else on digital books. I'd stay away from Z Library because of the fact that even though, yes, that's supposed to be a legitimate source, it's not helping you out at all. Right. And if I'm going to like your book, I feel like I should support you. So sorry for my rant, but when I said that and I saw your TikTok, I'm like, I know there's more she wants to say. I know you can't because of you're in a contract, but we as fans, I'm a host of this show. I can say whatever I want. So basically they need to get their ass in gear and make sure that people like yourself is protected. And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to say too much. I try to stay professional, but you're absolutely right. It's so frustrating because I know that there's more that could be done and easily be done, to protect not only us, but them too, because I mean, the amount of man hours they're having to put into these issues, it's crazy.
So with all that being said and done, one thing I want to ask you about the arrangement is I know that you have a song and a scent that you use for every book. What was the song and the scent for the arrangement? And did you use the same one for the other 2 books in the trilogy?
Oh man, I have to look it up. You're putting me on the spot. I've had so many. Okay, so the arrangement was How to Save a Life by The Fray. That was the song, which is really fitting once you read it. And the scent was Rose. And so I felt like that was just a really, really romantic scent. But I used different ones. So then the amendment was Better Man and All Too Well by Taylor Swift. She had just released her Taylor's Version album when that came out. And then the scent was Autumn Evening for that because that was set more in the fall and it felt really cool. And then the Atonement, I'm showing my 90s baby right now, but it was All or Nothing by O-Town. And then the scent was Bookends, which was a candle that a reader sent me. And I felt like it was really fitting because it was the end of that series. So it just felt pretty cool.
All fitting. You picked very good songs.
Yeah, they're always fun. I joke because I tend to do really sappy love songs for all my books, and then I write really dark and twisted thrillers, but I try to make them fit where they can.
Now, just to add to your accolades a little bit, You did receive Best Book in 2021 and 2022. You also received Best Suspense in 2022. I believe that The Reunion was the book for Best Suspense. What book was it that won the Best Book for 2021 and 2022?
That was The Reunion as well.
So all three goes to The Reunion.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting and so unexpected.
So you have been dubbed the Queen of Twists. I have also seen the Queen of Domestic Suspense. The Queen of Twists definitely fits you. I don't think I've read any other thriller that has as many twists as yours, but they make sense, and that's the most important thing. How do you feel about those monikers that's been bestowed upon you from your readers?
Oh man, I have had readers calling me that for years now, and it's still like it like gives me goosebumps. Like I love it. I love the idea of that, of me being, just me being a favorite author in any like anyway, that's just crazy to me. That's been my dream forever. So for them to say, like you're the queen of twists, or you write the best twists, it's just such a good feeling. I love it. It is a crown I wear with great pride.
So usually at this point, I ask what's coming next, but I already know. So if you guys are keeping up, let me remind you again. Kiersten released the arrangement in January 28th of 2021. She came back with the amendment on February 1st of 2022. Followed that up with the atonement in July 1st of 2022. And she has now announced several days ago, probably a week ago, because it's a whole countdown, that she is releasing If You're Reading This, which comes out September 1st. So by the time you hear this, it probably will already be out. Can you tell us anything about If You're Reading This?
Yeah. So if you're reading this, it's probably my most emotional story yet, but still full of twists and mystery. It is about a woman who was supposed to marry the love of her life, and on their wedding day, he dies. And they were supposed to open this box of letters from everyone who attended the wedding, and they're supposed to open them on their first anniversary. And in this box of letters, there is a letter that explains or hints at the fact that she might not really know the reason he died and that there might be more to his death. And so she opens it on what would have been their 1-year anniversary with her 3 best friends. They've gone away to a cabin. And so she reads this and immediately goes down a dark path of trying to figure out what happened and who might know more than they're saying.
That just sounds like it's born to be full of twists.
Oh, yes, of course.
So I want to help you with a little bit of marketing. I was thinking about this, looking at all the books you have. You're exclusive to Kindle Unlimited for ebooks. This is what I need in my life. I need a K-Mod Edition Kindle. Amazon, if you're listening, I need a K-Mod Edition Kindle. Here's what the K-Mod Edition Kindle would give us. It would give us a Kindle, like the new one I just bought, but it would give us access to all of your books, even if they got to pay you for them. But we would have all those books already preloaded in there. And then it would come with a substantial amount. So let's just say 90 days, 12 months full of KU, so we can get all the rest of K-Mod's books. I'm telling you, if there was such a thing, I think that would fly off of the shelves. I would happily sell the Kindle I have and buy a K-Mod Edition Kindle. So that's my pitch. What do you think about that?
Hey, I would be totally down for that. I actually had a reader tell me, I think earlier this year, that she thought I should do an app for my books. That's like a subscription, and you pay the monthly fee and you get all my books and like behind the scenes info. I was like, that's not a bad idea either. So I'm always looking for new ways to deliver my books to people.
Hey, there's a lot of app makers out there that you can get to do that. Apple's the biggest app store. I can see that totally selling. I would sign up for that myself because that ensures me that not only do I have the current releases from you, that I also have whatever you got coming out next. And I don't know how long your contract is with Amazon, but I will say this to you. You've been so successful. You're a very sweet person. I see you with your fans all the time. You're always taking photos with them. I think that you can survive without Amazon. I do think that later on down the line that they're the only game in town right now. I do think there's other companies coming after them and will do it better than what Kindle Unlimited is doing. So I hope you never sell yourself short. Don't get too comfortable with just having KU. Understand you have a base and a following, maybe more than what some other indie authors have already, that would be able to support you even if you wasn't with KU.
Thank you. I hope to be eventually be able to be wide because I want Apple readers and Kobo readers and Nook readers to be able to read my books too. And right now they have access to audio and physical books, but I know the world is going more toward ebooks, so I want to be available everywhere.
So you are an indie author. You always have been. You know, you're on some boards for that. The last one I talked to you about is exactly that. So I know that you have done traditional publishing before. The other authors I've interviewed, most of them except for one, are indie authors. The one that I did, they have a great publishing company, Ingenious Books, and they let them be, the authors be who they want to be. But you've ran into the opposite of that. So is it true that if you have a traditional publishing company, they can pretty much say, you need to cut this, you need to add this, you need to take this away, it's too short, it's too long? Did they take a lot of control from you guys?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I did a 2-book deal last year and I had 26 books out that were indie at the time. And so I'd had control over everything. I really didn't know what I was kind of getting myself into, but I just wanted to try out, this traditional world that I'd always dreamed of. And yeah, I mean, they control everything. They control the covers and the pricing and they can say, no, we need different names or we need different, twists or we don't like this ending. And that's it. That's their word is law. And I know there are different publishers that have different rules. And, I've spoken to other publishers that say that that's not how they work. But yeah, I mean, for me, when you step into the traditional world having nothing out, you know that this is just how it works and you don't know any other way. And I also know that they're trying to make the books better. They're trying to make them more marketable in their eyes. But for me, I knew that my books were marketable because I was marketing them. I'd been marketing them. I knew that they were selling. And so for me, it was just, I came from a place of, well, why do I have to change this? Because I love it like this and my readers are going to love it because I'm talking to my readers all the time, all day long, and I know what they like in my stories. And so, yeah, I mean, it was really hard. I had trouble giving up control over things that I really felt strongly were okay. And I had to change because that's not how the traditional world works. So, needless to say, I only have 2 books that are traditional, and the rest of mine forever and ever will be indie because I love having control. I always say it feels special because my books feel like they're coming straight from my heart to my readers. Obviously, I have editors that make suggestions, but at the end of the day, every story, it's what I wanted it to be. I don't have to make huge decisions because for me, writing, it is a business, but it's also what I love. And if I don't love it anymore, then I don't want to do it. And writing in the traditional world made me not love it.
And you can tell that because if you weren't here for your fans or just wanted the enjoyment of your story, I don't think you would have signed up with KU. Because I explain this every episode, but you don't make a dime from KU unless somebody's turning a page. So you can't just download the book and go, well, if I did my part, she's going to get paid. No, you got to read the book. And you can see exactly how many pages has been read over that month and that time span. So I appreciate the fact that you're indie. I think a lot more people should be. I've been told by other authors that it could take up to 2 years for a publisher to release a book that you've written right now. So if you were still traditional, do you think that you would be able to release these books? Even if your fans is clamoring for them, can you release the books in the fashion and the speed that you're releasing them now?
Oh, definitely not. So the publisher that I was with, they actually are really fast for the traditional world. That was one of the reasons I wanted to work with them. And the most that they could do was 2 or 3 a year, and which is a lot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do 8 and that's, I want, when I write a book and I'm excited about it and I'm all fired up and I want to send it out to my readers, a month later, which is typically around the time that it goes out, a month or 2 later, and I'm still excited about it. I haven't worked that plot to death. I haven't rewritten it, 11 or 12 times. It's still the story because I write the story that I want it to be. And so I do go through and edit it, 4 different times, but I don't have to rewrite it because it's just about making it stronger at that point. And so I'm able to release at a much faster frequency because the stories are coming from me and because I have a team that's dedicated to getting them out, getting them edited. I'm on my editor's schedule an entire year in advance for every month, and my proofreader schedule, same thing. And with traditional world, they have so many other authors that they're dealing with. One round of edits took 6 months with the traditional publisher, where one round of edits with my editor takes 2 weeks because that's all she's working on. She's waiting for my books to come to her. And so there's just such a different speed. And it also has to do with expectations. The traditional world does not set expectations of fast releases. Most authors, you look at Stephen King or James Patterson. Well, he might be a little different, but Stephen King, it's one book a year and that's it. And that's why you see a lot of traditional authors doing pen names so that they can release more often, because traditional publishers just typically don't like that.
Well, I'm glad that you're indie, because you release books so frequently, especially trilogies, that it's just enough time for it to keep lingering. And then right when you want to forget about it, here's the next book. So I do thoroughly appreciate that. Is there anything that you would like to say to your readers and fans out there before we go?
Just that I love you all so much. I say this all the time, but I wish for you. I wish for my readers. My whole life, I grew up and I just wanted to do this. And I never take a second of it for granted. I wake up every day and I get to come to this keyboard and I know that my fans are waiting for that next book. And it's just the best feeling in the world. And so thank you for listening. Thank you for being who you are. And thank you for letting me live my dream.
Well, Kiersten, I thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. I know that you are extremely busy. I am happy that I've got this time to not only sit down and meet you, but to sit down and talk about all of your success. I wish you, your husband, and your kid, as well as your dogs, the best. And I know that nothing but good things is going to be coming from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
All right. Anytime you want to come back, you're free to come back. Maybe after we get the next book here that's coming out, if you're reading this, feel free to want to come back. We can have another conversation about that.
I'd love to.
All right, Kiersten, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So you heard it there. That is the fabulous Kiersten Modglin. Hey, you guys can get all of her books right now. $10 a month, Kindle Unlimited. All 34, 35 pretty soon will be there. You can read them at your own pace and your own time, but whatever you do, please read them. Make sure she gets paid for her work. Don't buy her books and return them. And please be aware of people out there that is trying to make money in her name. So we'll come back next week with another true crime episode. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. Everything about Kiersten Modglin will be not only in the show notes, but also on our website under her episode. Be sure to go and check her out. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. And remember, this is the podcast that takes two passions and turn them into one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Authors. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. On Facebook at True Crime and Authors. On Twitter at Authors True. On YouTube and TikTok at True Crime and Authors. And email at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Dazzling_Ray from Fiverr. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild from Fiverr. And I'm the voice guy, your imaging guy from Fiverr. See you next time on True Crime and Authors.